What's up guys, it's MMA Matt here, and in today's video, I'll be analyzing the fight between Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo, and at the end of this video, I'll include my predictions for the outcome of the fight. But before we get started, I need to show you guys something. As you can see here, this is my profile for Tapology that I use to record my predictions that I make on the channel. Right now, I have a 74% prediction rate, and I'm aiming to get it closer to 80% or even 90%. But the reason that I'm showing you guys this is a lot of people have been questioning how trustworthy my picks are for this channel, and I'm just showing you guys that this is basically a 75% prediction rate. So just think that my picks have a 75% chance of being right. And I think that's a pretty respectable prediction rate, especially for a smaller YouTube channel like mine. So now you guys are familiar with my channel's overall prediction rate. Now let's hop right into this fight analysis. Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo will be headlining a UFC fight night, which will be taking place in Macau, China. Unfortunately, I won't be watching this fight card live because where I live, this fight card will be starting at 3 a.m. and the main card is going to be starting at 6 a.m. So I'm most likely just going to be sleeping. But I know a lot of you guys are going to be watching this card live, so I'm still going to be here to give my fight analysis. And coming up, I will still be publishing my official predictions for this whole card. But today, we're just going to be focusing on the main event. Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo is going to be such an intriguing matchup because both fighters, they have such a high level fight IQ, and they're just amazing technical strikers, wrestlers, grapplers. Both fighters demonstrate skills that encapsulate all of MMA. And this is going to be a battle of two fight technicians, and we're getting to see how the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the grappling approach of Deiveson Figueiredo, along with his technical striking, is going to clash with the elite wrestling and tight boxing of Petr Yan. I might be the first person to say this, but I believe this might be the highest fight IQ bout in UFC history, especially when you take into account each individual's accomplishments, how they conduct themselves in the octagon, and how much knowledge of fighting that they both display. I believe this fight has the highest combined fight IQ in UFC history. For the first portion of this analysis, I'm going to go over each fighter's strengths and weaknesses. Starting off with Petr Yan's strengths. Yan, he has some of the most elite striking in the bantamweight division. His precision and his combinations demonstrates why this is true. Yan, he is a very skilled technical striker with excellent boxing fundamentals. He also mixes in Muay Thai into his boxing style, which I think is an excellent combination for an elite striker in the bantamweight division. Petr Yan's second strength is his pressure and control of his fights. He is exceptional at maintaining pressure while staying defensively responsible. Yan is able to cut off the cage and keep his opponents moving backwards, and this allows him to dictate the terms of the fight. His ability to mix up strikes with calculated aggression can overwhelm opponents. This kind of relates to his third strength, which is his fight IQ. Yan, like I said in the beginning of this video, he has a very high fight IQ, and he can read his opponent's movements and adjust his tactics accordingly. This allows him to control the pace and flow of the fight, especially in the later rounds. Petr Yan's fourth strength is his cardio and conditioning. You'll rarely ever see Petr Yan gas out in one of his fights, and this allows him to maintain a very consistent high pace throughout his fights. This is a huge ability because his endurance is crucial when he's facing aggressive fighters that rely on heavy pressure in the early rounds. Petr Yan's fifth strength is his takedown defense and defensive wrestling. Petr Yan has showcased his excellent takedown defense in many UFC fights, such as when he fought Aljamain Sterling, where even though he got taken down, he was able to not be controlled for long periods, and that allows him to keep his fight standing where he excels. Now moving on to Petr Yan's weaknesses. Petr Yan's first weakness is that he has a tendency to start off slow in his fights, and this can allow other fighters to get a few rounds in the beginning, and this leads to Petr Yan having to pick it up in the later rounds. For example, sometimes he might take off the first 2 rounds to kind of analyze his opponent's like tendencies and movement, and to like download those types of patterns. And even though he's using that time to adapt to that specific fighter he's fighting, this can lead to him being behind on certain scorecards. And we saw this in the Sean O'Malley fight. Honestly, I think he won that fight, but Petr Yan in that first round, he did start a little bit kind of slow, and then he kind of put on the pace and pressure in the second and third rounds. But like I said, by him starting slow, he kind of gives up the first couple of rounds, and that I believe is one of his major weaknesses as a fighter. But moving on to his second weakness, which is his vulnerability to elite wrestlers. Now, I know I said before he has very good defensive wrestling and takedown defense, and that can be said for about 99% of his fights. However, that Merab fight where he got 50-45, it kind of exposed how vulnerable he is to the elite of the elite wrestlers in the bantamweight division. He has excellent takedown defense against strikers, but when Petr Yan is facing the top of the division like Umar Nurmagomedov or Merab Dvalishvili, those are the best wrestlers in the bantamweight division. And so far, Petr Yan, he hasn't been able to get past Merab. And if he fought Umar Nurmagomedov, I believe the same result will happen to Petr Yan when he fought Merab. So until Petr Yan can show that he has improved his takedown defense when he's fighting the best wrestlers, I think this is a major weakness that many fighters in the bantamweight division can exploit if they have the credentials. Fortunately for Petr Yan, Deiveson Figueiredo is not an elite chain wrestler like a Merab Dvalishvili. So I don't think that this weakness is going to be as exploited in this fight unless Deiveson Figueiredo just changes his whole fighting style completely. However, this is still a weakness that Petr Yan needs to deal with if he wants to become champion again. Petr Yan's third weakness is his vulnerability to leg kicks and his insufficient leg kick defense. Petr Yan's reliance on his boxing style does leave his legs vulnerable to leg kicks, and for him to overcome this weakness, he needs to start checking leg kicks more often, because by him getting hit by so many leg kicks, it can disrupt his mobility and interrupt his striking rhythm. Now moving on to Deiveson Figueiredo's strengths. Deiveson Figueiredo's first strength is his power and explosiveness. One of Figueiredo's most dangerous attributes is his knockout power, particularly in his right hand. He has the ability to end a fight with a single strike, and his explosive power allows him to overwhelm opponents, even in exchanges where he's under pressure. His ability to generate power from short bursts, especially in the clinch or while coming forward, is a major threat. However, recently, Figueiredo has moved from the flyweight division to the bantamweight division. In the bantamweight division, Figueiredo's power hasn't been as pronounced as it was when he was a flyweight, because I remember watching Deiveson Figueiredo versus Joseph Benavidez 2, and the power mismatch in that fight was insane. But now in the bantamweight division, he's fighting a little bit more heavier people, so they can take a little bit more punishment. But Deiveson Figueiredo's power is still there in the bantamweight division. For example, he was the first person to drop Chito Vera in his recent fight, and also the power threat on the feet allowed him to open up the grappling and submit Cody Garbrandt when they fought in UFC 300. So even though his power might not be as lethal in the bantamweight division, he still has the power threat in this matchup, and of course he can knock out anyone if he catches them with a clean shot. Deiveson Figueiredo's second strength is his finishing instincts. There are some fighters in the UFC that don't have a strong finishing instinct. Fighters that go to decisions a lot, such as Bilal Muhammad, Israel Adesanya, Leon Edwards, maybe even Ian Gary, like that type of attribute of fighter. I'm not trying to put anyone down, but they lack a strong finishing instinct like Deiveson Figueiredo. When he senses that you're hurt, he doesn't stop the pressure or try and coast to a decision or take the next round off. No, he's gonna step on the gas and he's gonna try and finish you in that moment. That happened in the Joseph Benavidez 2 fight that I just mentioned. There are just many instances where when he has you hurt, he gets into that hunting mode where he just needs to just end the fight. And a lot of fighters, they lack that finishing instinct these days. And another fighter who has that finishing instinct is obviously Shavkat Rakhmonov. Fighters like that, they are very dangerous because you basically can't get hurt in their fights, because if you get hurt and they sense that you're hurt, the fight is basically kind of over. And that is the type of finishing instinct that Petr Yan will be facing when he fights Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo's third strength is his grappling and jiu-jitsu. Figueiredo is a skilled Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, and while he's primarily known for his striking, his grappling is a very underrated part of his game. He has solid takedowns, and he has been able to submit opponents, including an arm triangle submission over Tim Elliott, and in UFC 300, he also submitted Cody Garbrandt due to a rear naked choke. His ability to mix striking with clinch work and his transitions into grappling makes him a very unpredictable and difficult to counter. Deiveson Figueiredo's fourth strength is his chin and durability. Figueiredo has shown that he can take a punch and continue to push forward. Despite his aggressive nature of fighting, he has a very solid chin, and even when hit, he maintains his composure and keeps moving forward. This resilience allows him to continue fighting at a high pace even when his opponents are throwing back. Deiveson Figueiredo's fifth strength is his high fight IQ and his adaptability. Much like Petr Yan, Figueiredo is a very smart fighter who is able to make adjustments during a fight. For example, in his rivalry against Brandon Moreno, Figueiredo was able to adjust after losing a few early rounds and had success in the later rounds of their fights by changing his strategy. Figueiredo's ability to adapt and to learn from his mistakes is a very good strength to have when you're fighting a difficult opponent like Petr Yan. Now moving on to Deiveson Figueiredo's weaknesses. Deiveson Figueiredo's first weakness, and I think this is kind of a minor one, but it is his cardio and gas tank. While he can maintain a high pace early on in his fights, his gas tank has been tested in many fights, particularly in the rematches with Brandon Moreno, and Figueiredo tends to slow down in the later rounds, especially if he hasn't been able to secure a finish. This can make him vulnerable to fighters who can maintain a consistent pace or push the fight into the deeper waters. I think the main reason why he gasses out in some of his fights is because his fighting style relies on really explosive movements. And to be honest, all the examples that I really seen of him gassing out, that was in flyweight, and now he's in bantamweight. So he doesn't have to cut that extra 10 pounds, and that should improve his cardio. Honestly, I think his cardio should look better in this 5-round fight than it has ever looked when he fought 5-round fights at flyweight. Deiveson Figueiredo's second weakness is the leg kicks as well. Like many aggressive strikers, Figueiredo tends to focus on his own attacks, which sometimes leaves him vulnerable to leg kicks or low kicks. Against fighters who are skilled at exploiting leg kicks, such as Brandon Moreno, Figueiredo has shown some vulnerabilities. This can limit his movement, and it can also stop him from setting up his striking rhythm as well. Now moving on to the second part of this analysis video, where I'll be explaining how each fighter can beat each other by using their strengths to their advantage and exploiting their opponent's weaknesses. Starting off with Petr Yan, I believe that if Petr Yan wins this fight, I think it should go all 5 rounds. Honestly, I think Deiveson Figueiredo is such a tough opponent to finish. I can see Petr Yan winning by like a TKO stoppage, but I can't see Petr Yan knocking out Deiveson Figueiredo or submitting him. So if Petr Yan wins this fight, I think it will definitely go all 5 rounds. And for Petr Yan to beat Deiveson Figueiredo in a 5-round bout, he would need to capitalize on his superior striking, because I do think Petr Yan has the superior striking between the two fighters. He's more well-rounded, and I think Petr Yan has a better defensive guard than Deiveson Figueiredo. So if he capitalizes on his superior striking and controls the cage, I think that he can beat Deiveson Figueiredo in a 5-round fight. He needs to control the distance with his striking because he has the superior boxing in this matchup. So he needs to fight behind his jab, and he needs to go to Deiveson Figueiredo's body, because Deiveson Figueiredo, he has a very high guard, which leaves his midsection vulnerable to body kicks and body punches. Also, Petr Yan, he needs to weaponize his cardio and pressure. I think that most likely on the judges' scorecards, Petr Yan would probably not win round 1, because like I said, he's a slow starter. But after losing round 1 by like a 10-9, he needs to use that information that he observed from Deiveson Figueiredo to use that in the next 4 rounds. Another thing that Petr Yan can do to beat Deiveson Figueiredo in a 5-round fight is to use leg kicks. Petr Yan, he can use his Muay Thai style to deliver very brutal leg kicks to Deiveson Figueiredo's legs. And like I said, Deiveson Figueiredo, he has insufficient leg kick defense. So if Petr Yan can chip at his legs for most of the fight, I believe this will eliminate Deiveson Figueiredo's explosiveness. Another thing that Petr Yan can do to beat Deiveson Figueiredo in a 5-round fight is to utilize his controlled aggression and to maintain his composure and be patient. Deiveson Figueiredo is an excellent counter striker, so if Petr Yan gets a little bit too aggressive or overextends on one of his combinations, Deiveson Figueiredo will make him pay for that. Therefore, Petr Yan needs to keep his boxing guard nice and tight and remain defensively aware while he's striking. So if Petr Yan can do everything that I just said, I think that this will be the most effective way that he could beat Deiveson Figueiredo while using the fighting style that he's most comfortable with. Now moving on to the way that I think that Deiveson Figueiredo can beat Petr Yan in their upcoming fight. What I think that Deiveson Figueiredo needs to do in this fight to beat Petr Yan is that he needs to utilize his pressure and aggression. Petr Yan, he is an amazing striker, but no matter how good of a striker you are, if someone is constantly pressuring you and is constantly keeping you on the back foot, that is going to disrupt your striking style in some way. Not saying that Petr Yan is bad on the back foot, but Petr Yan is going to be more in tune with his striking when he is the one pressuring Figueiredo. So Figueiredo needs to make sure that he's going to be the one in the driver's seat of this fight and is pressuring Petr Yan instead. Another thing that Deiveson Figueiredo needs to utilize is his timing and his power. I think that Deiveson Figueiredo has the power advantage in this matchup, and he needs to harness this power by timing his punches and shots effectively. If Deiveson Figueiredo can do this, I believe that he could win rounds by damage, because there have been many instances in Petr Yan's career, like when he fought Sean O'Malley, where a lot of people gave the fight to Sean O'Malley because they think that Sean O'Malley beat Petr Yan based on purely damage. If Deiveson Figueiredo can create the most damage in this fight by timing his power punches, I believe that is a clear path to victory for Deiveson Figueiredo. Another thing that I believe Deiveson Figueiredo needs to utilize is his clinch and grappling game. Deiveson Figueiredo is going to have the grappling advantage in this fight, and he needs to make that known. Even though Petr Yan is the superior wrestler, I believe that Deiveson Figueiredo can use his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu expertise to reverse certain positions that Petr Yan might put him in, and to find certain positions that can potentially end the fight. I believe that Deiveson Figueiredo, he has a very strong chance of winning this fight via submission. Therefore, I think that Deiveson Figueiredo, he needs to utilize his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in this fight. Deiveson Figueiredo is going to be at a slight size disadvantage. However, I do think that Deiveson Figueiredo is going to have the speed advantage in this fight. He needs to use the fact that he came from a faster division to slip the counterpunches of Petr Yan. Just like Figueiredo, Petr Yan is also a great counter striker. But if Deiveson Figueiredo can use that flyweight speed and that flyweight evasiveness to his advantage by moving in and out the pocket without getting hit by any of Petr Yan's counter strikes. Lastly, I think that Deiveson Figueiredo, he needs to maintain his composure throughout this whole fight and just keep watching Petr Yan's moves. The way that he fought Chito Vera is a perfect blueprint to use in this fight. So if Deiveson Figueiredo can put together everything that I just said, I believe that most likely Deiveson Figueiredo would win this fight via decision also. I can also see a small chance of Deiveson Figueiredo winning by like a TKO stoppage or a submission. But I feel like both fighters, they're most likely to win this fight via decision. So my official prediction for this fight is Petr Yan winning by decision. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys made it this far, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys' viewership. And if you guys have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe because I will be posting more videos just like this. And if you guys like the content that I'm producing, I would really appreciate it if you guys give this video a thumbs up. But I have to go now, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.